Well, coming up, an extraordinary story, and we're asking some questions. Can this happen, and what would you do if your 6-year-old son, who his parents say has been acting like a girl since he was 2, was diagnosed with gender identity disorder? It's a rare diagnosis for a first grader, but it happened to a little boy in Ohio. And what his parents did next has landed the boy in a foster home and his parents in court. In a moment, we're going to talk to our sex therapist, Laura Berman, about the disorder. But first, more on the family's story. And you're going to notice we've obscured the child's face because of his age. From the time Zachary was just 2 years old, Sherry Lipscomb says, her son was different. The now 6-year-old from Westerville, Ohio, prefers dresses to jeans, talks about getting married one day wearing a wedding gown, and calls himself Aurora after the princess in Sleeping Beauty. He even asks for tiaras and bracelets for his birthday.
This is a child who's identifying as female, and no one was forcing him. And it wasn't, oh, God, bracelet, get that away from me. It was, well, yeah, sure, boy, it's neat. Can I take the tag off? I want to put it on now. While
Zachary was attending kindergarten at this elementary school, a psychiatrist diagnosed him with gender identity disorder, the desire to become a member of the opposite sex. Last month, his parents informed school officials that Zachary would enroll this year as Rory, short for Aurora, and would dress as a girl. That's when county officials removed him from his home. Now Zachary, or Aurora, is in a foster home. His family is fighting in court to get him back. While psychologists for the county are skeptical that the child has gender identity disorder.
That diagnosis itself, whether it's correct, and I have no idea if it is, whether it's incorrect, and I have no idea if it is so controversial and so uncomfortable for people that it creates nothing but voyeuristic concern in the community or really finger-pointing at this child.
Since the court battle is still going on, the Lipscomb's lawyer advised them not to speak publicly, and we wanted to turn to sex therapist Dr. Laura Berman, who joins us this morning from Boston. Laura, can this happen? Can a 6-year-old know for sure about gender identity?
Well, many of us never know for sure about gender identity. I can say that many gender theorists believe that a child's perception of him or herself as a boy or a girl, especially in relation to other children, really does become quite clear at around age 2 or 3. Children have a clear perception of what gender they are and how their gender exists in relation to other children.
But what about a parent looking for signs, playing with dolls, wearing dresses? That's not automatically a sign one way or the other, is it?
No, absolutely. Children experiment with all sorts of toys and dress and play, and it's very common for young girls to imitate typical male-like behavior and young boys to imitate typical female behavior. I think when it's a gender identity disorder issue, it's because it's the problem is to the extent where the child really feels, or the adult in most cases, really feels like they are the opposite gender trapped in their gender's body.
As we said, it has been diagnosed by professionals in this case, and the parents made a decision not to let the child be tormented, but to follow their instincts, and as we said, send him to school in a dress with a different name. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that decision on their part?
It's a really tough call to make because, you know, we don't know all the details of this case. I think it's important to say that this really brings up two basic philosophical questions. First, how far can a parent go to support their child and to try to support their child's wishes before they're potentially putting that child in emotional or physical danger, or before that child really is at risk of being taken away from them? And second, what does this case bring up for all of us about gender and gender expression in general? If this child was a little girl named Christine and went to school deciding that she was going to be called Chris and wear jeans and T-shirts and only climb trees and play baseball and football, no one would say a word. They'd say, oh, how cute, she's a little tomboy. But somehow when this little boy wants to express himself in ways that are typically feminine, it's extremely uncomfortable for us. So I think it sort of forces us to think about how we think about gender and gender expression in general, especially about boys being so-called effeminate, and how we feel about that.
Which raises the question, there is a school of thought among professionals that you treat it, that in effect you have behavior modification.
Yes, there's two schools of thought. One basically is that you try behavior modification where you reward, and this isn't only for children, this is a form of therapy for adults as well, that you reward behaviors that are considered positive and give negative reinforcement for behaviors that are considered negative. The other school of thought is that you support the person regardless, and that the goal of the treatment is just to help them adjust and to cope and to function in society, not necessarily to change something that they're comfortable with.
Is there a cause for gender identity disorder?
There is a range of potential causes and theories. In fact, there was just an article that was written in a journal called the Archives of Sexual Behavior that proposed that, in fact, gender identity disorder may have a genetic component, although that's unproven as of yet, and that's something that researchers, I'm sure, will be looking into. And certainly, you know, you have to take a biopsychosocial approach to this, and it's never one thing or the other. More often than not, it could be chemistry, it could be genetics, it could be socialization, it could be adjustment issues. Certainly this child has a lot of other issues going on in his life, both personally, emotionally, as well as in his larger family. So it's a very complicated case. It's hard to say.
Were you surprised that the state decided to intervene?
I'm not surprised that this is a controversial issue and something that should be of concern. It's once again a tough call to know whether the state did the right thing. I think the most important thing is that all the facts are gathered and that this child's care is an utmost priority, and his mental health.
All right. Laura Berman, thanks to you again for coming to us from Boston this morning.